Today I'm going to talk about self-judgment and balancing the scales and the weights. We all know what chemistry means. I feel like a man around that woman. I feel like a woman around that man. It's like they balance me. When I'm around them, I feel more like the woman or the man. This could be true for same sex, but I'm using this paradigm for what I'm sharing. And there's like a prism, which is the effect. And then there's the core, which is the cause. It's like the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And that's a truth that can be hard to swallow because some of us might think, the peripheral nervous system can send back information to the central nervous system and affect it at the core, but that's not true. It could affect it up till the point of the core, but the core itself is always going to be the cause, and the peripheral is always going to be the effect. And the same is true with the focus of the eye. The peripheral focus is always going to be for more like flitting, transient kind of motions, and the core, central focus, outside of the prism, which picks up all the little details, is going to be centralized focus. And there is a sort of mystical, fun way to look at this and wonder, which is if my eyes are open, right? But if, let's say, I imagine that actually it's as if my hands are covering my eyes, so I can't see. If I would remove a layer from my eyes, I would see good and speak wonders. That is to say, if I would see more clearly in my judgments, I would see the good in what is, and I would speak in a way that might be beyond what someone might think a human is capable of, given if they knew the circumstances in their own blindness. So, in the other side of it, it's like if our eyes are open and we see something and we can't look away and we think this limited human is disappointing me, I want them to be more perfect and accommodating, but actually if we just cover our eyes to what we think is the truth, at times then we can be a friend to everybody, wherever they're at on the journey. Another angle to look at this is there are many messengers that come to us or that we see in the world. They have a message for us, whether it's where do you feel hurt, where do you feel insecure, by triggering us, or also, where are you doing a good job, where are you deserving of reassurance. And many of these messengers didn't fail and didn't succeed. And we may feel like they're insignificant and they don't matter. And we may judge them in such a way. These are just ways to look at it. And we have to have mercy because we are also that messenger. There are times where we have an agenda and it doesn't work. Or we are used as an instrument to bring more consciousness to somebody's inner world and it doesn't work. Or we think we've corrected a problem and it doesn't work. And the other side is we have to have mercy on people. Maybe we don't have to look at it like they're messengers, but those who have very high inclination towards death, suicidality, destruction, violence, fear. They're born into it or they are that way. Perversions, for example, the sexual drive in them to unite is looking at children or their own children or other people's partners. There's so many ways in which it can be more difficult to exist in a world. It's almost like the world as a hospital. For somebody who's sicker than others, they're not going to get as much attention. They're going to be more needy. We have to have mercy on people who have deeper struggles with their challenges. And again, also with those who are the messengers that bring information to us. Even if it's not a successful mission, they planted seeds. Many years later, it could evolve into something else. A tree, a sequoia, however you say it. It's like the bonsai version of that, or the large version of it. I went to a bonsai exhibit at the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, and I saw one of those trees in tiny, and it was amazing. It just brought this home to me. Sometimes we don't see the whole tree. It takes a long time. And if the tree could shrink and we could see it like in a bonsai version, we would see the magnificence and the details. And we'd have more mercy on it, on its way, because we'd know that at some point there would be the success or the failure that brings us or it to the success. And there's got to be a level of not wanting to teach anybody anymore, not needing to be right, not needing to know, here to learn. To be a good judge is to be here, to be open, and also to see this impermanence of everyone. I've started touching on this already with the process and transition of each one of us and our trajectory, but also, when I say trajectory, I mean the evolution of a certain aspect of ourselves, but also of the whole picture. As the whole prism will go when the core goes, the whole peripheral will go when the central goes. And it's not wanting everyone anyone really to be lost. I'm thinking of how to put this. The grief, because of grief, really, the grief of the impermanence, you know, we sometimes bond extra tightly just knowing that at some point they could be taken, and we can't imagine that. But if we really live with that feeling, you know, how brave it is to love, knowing one of us has to go first. If I love you, you could go or I could go and leave you. And if you love me, you could go or I could go and, you know, you'll leave me. And so it's not wanting really to lose or to love. And then we learn how to have a more balanced, we learn how to judge the moments as precious. Fleeting really brings to gratitude. And then we need to look at our food in this extreme diet culture and extreme eating culture and recognize where there's abundance, but also it's not high quality. There's a hunger. There's a deep hunger there. There are people eating and eating because the food is not bringing them the satisfaction that it would if it was grown with love, harvested with love, transported and designed and packaged with love, and, you know, cooked and prepared with love. So people are so hungry. They're not greedy. Fat people, obese people, it's like there's this deep hunger of what they're eating is not satisfying them. And we've got to see that in our culture. It's a big deal. And we have to recognize who shows up in the stress. The delicate, fragile nature of relationship. It's like a baby before the baby's born. So even not in a romantic relationship, even in a sibling relationship or a coworker relationship, there's first impression, and then there's so on. There's time, there's evolution, there's repair and ruptures, and there's critical periods, and there's quantity and quality aspects to communication and availability. But we also have to recognize who shows up in the stress. There's a fragility to each of us in our skin, in our fallibility. And in order to let go of worry, we need to know that we're supported and feel secure and safe. And so in our stressful moments is when we're programmed biologically to look for help outside of us. And so at those moments, it's important, like if we feel like a burden because I don't want to stay dirty or helpless, like I feel, we call it in Yiddish, schmutzig, like dirty, like kind of like smudgy dirt all over, like. And we could think of even, you know, the self-esteem this way, not so much the body, but it got dirty. It was associated and associating with impure, unhealthy judgments. Superficial, short-term, you know, manipulative, leechy, or in other words, codependent enabling, like, please give me more of your life force energy because I'm not okay. So it's like, who shows up in our stress could result in us wanting somebody over and over and over to be there for us, but then we end up feeling unclean. If the whole nature of it is like we don't go back to our clean nature, the one who shows up in stress reminds us we're okay, and if we feel helpless and dirty, they remind us we're clean and empowered. So if we've been having inner dirtiness, we're going to be comfortable with shaming, mocking, of myself or my standards, being rebuked and accused and so on. So it's really about recognizing, for example, my body. If I'm going to start labeling it short and fat, it's going to tell me that it's working, it's exhausted, because it's going to try to be something it's not. It's going to try to be skinny and tall. Now, I may not be fat or short, it's all relative, but these words are shaming, rebuking, mocking, and they're going to cause my body to feel unclean and try to shed something. And I'm going to look outside of me for that validation that I look beautiful, or that my body is naturally here to honor the Creator that made it by being itself and its innate glory. So it's really important to look at this in physical aspects, but also in psychological and emotional aspects, and also perceptive aspects to how we see ourselves and the world. And I'm going to run through now just like small pieces of the way to balance the scales and the weights. One is matching the words to the actions. Another is looking at what goes in must come out, versus sweeping it under the rug and then developing constipation or diarrhea. Oh, that's the worst, the combination of needing to go so forcefully and so much, but it won't come out. And we teach ourselves to hold these things. If we always try to sweep it away, it's denial. And this means also shedding the snake skin. This is a very vulnerable period where the old skin doesn't fit anymore. It doesn't fit the out. The out doesn't fit the in, the outfit we're wearing. And we have to re-arrive constantly into this. We call it in Hebrew, Heichal, the palace, the temple of the body, is light in form. So it's going back to the light, the roots, the stem cells, the beliefs. Before we go into the forms and the names, this comes after. And anything that came after is not the cause, it's the effect. And then sort of asking questions, am I alive? And, we can go back to Descartes or the brain in the vat. Descartes was a philosopher who said, there's no way to know I am here thinking, living, unless I could say my mind is thinking I'm alive. But it's like there's these thought experiments where you imagine you're a brain in a vat, or this is all a simulation. And this is very common effect of psychedelics. It could be an overwhelming sense of life and death without actually having the integrative tools to understand how to live through not knowing. And it's okay for the mind not to know if it's alive. As we shed the snakeskin and we re-arrive, it actually is going to ask us, what is life? Now life is new. And is life alive? Am I life? Am I alive? Am I the container? And these are important questions that I cannot answer for you. But in order to bring the soul into the body and maintain its residence, in order to know who is the I that is alive and who is the life that is living, and allowing the doing and the non-doing to inform each other. You are loved. Telling the body, let's practice, maybe a hand on the heart, you are loved. And the body telling itself quietly, you are loved inside. And telling you, you are loved. And you telling yourself, you are loved. This is the idea of how these are thoughts that can become automatic patterns. And while we're in stress, we'll end up learning to go to people who remind us of that. Instead of, you have a reason you're stressed, that you deserve your stress, and, that kind of like the judge who's not merciful. And so becoming a merciful judge, we attract merciful judges. And this thoughts become our speech. We end up speaking with less rebuke and mocking and shaming. And also our actions, we end up being able to look even when we might be in the past slightly horrified that the person's not accommodating us exactly, or, giving us first, or, we didn't get a turn and we wanted one, and all those reasons of action. We become more patient. So life is also the fear, which is the non-doing. Like I said, am I alive? The mind goes into fear. Am I alive? I could die. Who's living? What happens after death? Is this hell or is this heaven? Like when I say after death, I mean the world to come. Is it now? Am I already dead? Like this is part of it. And then the anger is the doing, forcing, controlling, pushing, pulling. And life is this. Life is also these. And life is also the division of I don't know if I should be afraid or if I should control. And it comes into sluggishness, like, it's like that deep hunger for life, for vitality, which the food holds, like I mentioned. And the heart can offer the mind something to serve, which it needs. So we need to then serve something. We need to have a master. The judge needs to have something that's the law. The judge needs a law. And the law here is that the heart, the mercy, is what to go by. So the mind, which doesn't know if I'm alive or dead, can serve the heart, which will inform me what brings peace, what brings life, what brings sustainability. In other words, the mind, which wants to stay alive, needs to have a law, and the heart will inform with an experience of love, of expansion, radiating. The heart has a circuitry. The heart circuitry goes into the entire body, so it brings oxygen to every cell. And if I don't believe that I have the power of judgment, you might say, no, I really don't know anything. I really don't. And that, like the denial I spoke about, which is like pushing it under the rug. I don't judge myself. I don't judge others. I'm actually very nice. If not you, then who? So is everybody else the judge? You've got to take accountability for your judgment. And some ways that I'm looking at this is my values that outlive me. But before I go there, I have to bring in something to do with the Jewish structure of judges. So I'll bring in a few random facts. One is there was a small Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin is the quorum of judges. The small one was 23. It had 23 whole judges. And they would judge over things like killing an animal, capital punishment of someone who did unnatural intercourse. And then there was a tiny group of 3 judges, which could be one judge at times. So for certain matters like money matters, one judge who was fit, who had very much judged on the side of mercy and could see very balanced algebra, calculus of moving dynamics, flexibility, applying the law and the judgment to himself first or herself first. But more often it was 3. You notice the odd numbers allows for no monopoly kind of where the even number. So the odd number really helps for something to push through, so there won't be that forcing when there's an even number, but some people might force so that they could be part of the odd number, but that would leave a kind of inner power struggle of trying to be odd, not on purpose, but just how it is. So 3 judges were for things like money matters, for example larceny, and injury matters such as damages, seducers, slanderers, and redeeming sacred property. Then there was the Great Sanhedrin, 71 whole judges. With all of this packed in, how to balance the scales and weights, and how to put ourselves in the other's shoes, and how to not punish the messenger, for example, on the way, and also how to be merciful on those who were born with, inclinations that are much stronger toward things that may be outside of the law. And this is for tribal, like a whole tribe needing to be judged, a whole group. Offensive war, for example, a high priest or a false prophet. Now, a priest could be judged or judge, testified against or testify against, but not a king for any of those, which is interesting. The priest sacrifices so the king can eat. In other words, the priest is like the 3 and the king is like the 4. The priest steps back, hollows a little to get spirit so that the king could take up more material and power and innocence and sort of like untouchability. And the stature, now what requirements for being in the Sanhedrin included things like stature, could say posture, we could say the mechanics of things like their wisdom, their ripened years, and also their treatment of their self, how they appeared, how they represented, and then, of course, also like exercises, sort of knowing many languages, learning about the times, like they called it sorcery, or we would call it maybe science or witchcraft or ESP, like all these whatever it is in the times, whatever's going on in the times, whatever can't be explained in the law, whatever esoteric kind of teachings there are, so that they could really, really judge properly. Usually they knew 70 languages, they said, 70 types of either dialects or methods of communication. And this is beyond really like, being a judge as a hobby or as each of us having a judge. These were people who were willing to give all of themselves to being a judge, their whole life and time and energy. And now I'm going to speak about I am still her, the one who chose to transform and face it all. And why do I say that is because the fundamental equalizer is death and transition. We all know that you could lose all your money. Very humbling. You could lose your health. Very humbling. And death. You could lose your life. Very humbling. These are things we actually cannot control, and they say that it's decreed in heaven. Things like this. Money and like health or death, and even marriage, loneliness, having a partner. And these are the fundamental equalizers. So for me to say my values outlive me, the changes I make live past my personal limit, and this is where I can judge and share with others an informed way of judging, it's important to see what are my values I'm judging according to. And so I am still her, that one who was before the transformation, and chose to face it all. And I'm going to be doing that, and I'm going to keep doing that. And that's a lifestyle. So being a good judge is constantly remembering and imagining the truth in this present moment so that the future will be one of transformation, so that everything can align with the truth rather than the truth bends to serve what we want. And also in the past, the humility of that, I have been a judge that was an unfavorable or not looking at the side of merit, not looking with mercy, and recognizing that values are something we share with each other. And I was taught these values, and I could teach these values, and we arrive constantly at these values. So one is inviting people and orienting them to underlying values is a way of, I'm not going to speak about my values, but I'm going to speak about my values in sharing values. So inviting people and orienting them. So letting it be something that they're interested in. Would you invite somebody to a potluck when they're a vegetarian where there's only meat? So it's really giving the person the interest and stimulating them to want to learn about the values. Giving vision by my personal story and tangible maps of change. Like I said, the transformation process. Judging the whole time favorably, knowing I'm still in process. And giving the vision of the past and the future, saying where I came from, where I hope to go, and relating it to the people I'm sharing the agenda with authenticity, so that I'm coming from a real place and not so much getting caught in performance or representation, even though that is a part of it. Giving the why to the what. And this is the final piece of it, is that the strain on the drive will outlast the purpose. In other words, the stress of pushing for something new, not just maintaining, but pushing for something new, will dwindle if we don't if we don't actually have a deep desire in the body and the spirit and network and share about it and kind of holistically focus on this instead of just going through the motions. So to be a favorable judge is to live with mercy, to live with the impermanence, with releasing the shame of wanting and yearning, of feeling greedy or hungry. It's to stop mocking. It's to stop, rebuking for the uncleanness or the stress. And it's a way of judging the self in a balanced methodology and lifestyle. Thank you for listening to me, blessing you today on your journey of self-judgment, being purified and balanced.